African Union summit wraps up in Mauritania. French President Macron to visit FELA'S African shrine in Lagos on Tuesday. Route restriction on articulated vehicles in Lagos. And in sports, Russia and Uruguay join final 8 in the World Cup.
This is ANN News.
I am Rotimi Akintunde. The 31st summit of the African Union wraps up on Monday in Mauritania. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari is among African leaders at the summit that has focused on reviewing the peace process in South Sudan and the reconciliation plans between Ethiopia and Eritrea. ANN's Jumoke Olatunji reports.
If you were wondering where most African leaders were over the weekend, you need to check them at the African Summit in Mauritania. The two-day summit was to take on the important and significant issues facing the continent. Of particular focus was the humanitarian situation in Africa. South Sudan also held an important place on the agenda. The AU Peace and Security Council gave special attention to the crisis there. The summit also discussed migration and displacement, especially millions of Africans fleeing to Europe, many of whom have run away from conflicts, insecurity, economic problems, terrorism, and national disasters in their home countries. A notable absentee at the summit is Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, who stayed home to attend to urgent state matters. He was represented at the summit by Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Monica Juma. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir also attended with the confidence that the ICC arrest warrant against him would not be honored here. Mauritania is not a signatory to the Tribunal of War Crimes. The ICC warrants were issued against Bashir in 2008 for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes allegedly committed in Darfur. Olajumoke Olatunji, ANN News.
Corruption on the continent was also on the agenda at the summit. Leaders are looking at ways to stamp out the scourge and finding ways to improve peace and security on the continent. ANN's Lucy Adeyemi reports.
The summit has been discussing ways to end the diversion of Africa's wealth to foreign countries, a practice AU chairperson Moussa Faki says hinders African development. AU says about 17% of Africa's wealth are stolen, squandered or diverted. The leaders are looking for a mechanism to return looted funds to the continent. They say most of such monies are hidden in tax havens abroad. French President Emmanuel Macron is also attending the summit to discuss the threat of extremism, the financial of counterterrorism and peacekeeping operations. Lucy Adeyemi, ANN News.
Right after his AU summit visit, French President Emmanuel Macron will head to Abuja for a meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari to discuss security and terrorism. After that, Macron will head to Lagos to visit FELA'S African Shrine. This is the nightclub established in the 70s by late Nigerian music legend Fela Anikulapo Kuti. Head of the organizing group for the visit describes Lagos as Africa's cultural capital. This was another deadly weekend in Borno State in Nigeria's northeast. Boko Haram terrorists raided an IDP camp there and killed 4 persons in Banki. They were reported to have invaded the camp on bicycle and on foot. The camp is located near the border with Cameroon. 4 others were injured. The terrorists also carted away camp supplies. Nigerian soldiers were reported to have engaged the militants in a firefight, killing 2 of the terrorists. A militia force member assisting the military was quoted as saying the jihadists had gained access to the camp by scaling a ditch dug around it. He also said the terrorists might have actually gone into the camp to steal food supplies. It has been reported recently that Boko Haram is running critically low on food supplies. Meanwhile, another galling report that 23 unidentified corpses have been found inside a forest in Zamfara state over the weekend. Armed bandits and herdsmen are suspected to have struck in the area. Police spokesman Mohammed Oshewu is reported to have said the bodies have been recovered and that investigation had begun to identify the perpetrators. Zamfara Governor Abdulaziz Yari had resigned his position as the state's chief security officer in mid-June, citing his helplessness in addressing insecurity in the state. The International Labour Organization says Nigeria is late in filing reports on labour practices and needs to get back in line to fulfill its obligations to the international body. The Nigerian Labour Congress blames the absence of a Nigerian Labour Advisory Council for the lapse. It says such an advisory council would have informed the government on very critical labour decisions. This became known when an ILO delegation visited the Nigerian Labour Congress in Abuja. Its official in Nigeria, David Dokino, says the Nigerian government has to be up to date in its report and that it has an obligation to fulfill the requirement of the ILO. The United States Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, claims at least 20,000 persons have been killed in Nigeria since June 2015, right after President Buhari assumed office. At the same time, the UK-based Christian Solidarity Worldwide is reporting that Fulani militias have killed more than 1,000 persons in the north in the first quarter of this year. Another 21 deaths were reported in the southern part of Nigeria in the same period. The UK House of Lords has expressed worry about President Buhari's inability to end the killings. The House of Lords has given a dire prediction that if not checked, the ethnic and religious killings in the country could escalate to the level of genocide in Rwanda. CFR is an independent organization that studies situations in different countries and offers policy options. Osun State Governor Rauf Aregbesola has declared his opposition to the federal government's proposals to establish cattle ranches across the country. The governor says Osun State was not ready to give up any part of its land for such purpose. His media aide, Shola Fasue, said on his behalf that the state had already established its own functioning ranches in Oloba and Iwo for 5 years now. He says the federal government will be welcomed to collaborate with the state for synergy. Recently, the Nigerian federal government received a repatriation of $350 million from the Swiss government from recovered loot by late General Sani Abacha. The government has decided the best way to use that money was to distribute it at $14 a month each to about 300,000 families in 19 states in the National Social Safety Net Program. Well, that idea doesn't sit well with the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, which says the plan is, quote, mistargeted and would not bring any tangible benefits to the beneficiaries, end quote. It describes the move as tokenism that would have no significant impact on poverty alleviation. The government announced last week that its distribution of the $14 monthly to families will begin this month. SERAP says distributing the returned loot to households in only 19 states will be both unfair and discriminatory. The federal government says 17 states are not included because they don't have in place the appropriate setup to implement the program. Stay with us. ANN News will return after these messages.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down, keep walking to the left, yes. You're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. Minister of Transport Rotimi Amechi has reiterated the federal government's commitment to the completion of the Lagos-Ibadan rail track construction works. Amechi paid an inspection visit to the construction site, urging the contractors to deliver the job on schedule. Our correspondent Joseph Steve was there.
Ongoing construction at the Lagos-Ibadan Standard Gauge Rail Track construction works. The visit aimed at inspecting the performance of the contractors, according to the Minister of Transport Rotimi Amechi, is proof of government's commitment to the project.
The whole Nigeria knows that the president is committed to railway now. Yeah, that's what that I say. I'm fortunate to be the Minister for Transport, because if you tell the president, the Minister for Transport wants to see you, he assumes he's railway. So they just say, please let him see me. So even if I have political problems and I say I want to see the president, I'm allowed to see the president because his assumption is that he's railway.
While there were concerns over the completion of the project, considering the effect of the rains on the speed of work, the minister assured the project will be delivered on schedule.
Now it's the civil works at the project, it's not the laying of the tracks. So if you're saying anything, it's how to manage it, to do the civil works under the current situation of weather challenges. So we insist that CCC must complete within the time, the framework we give them. But like they will argue, the time frame of the contract is 3 years, but we're not going to wait. We insist that they must complete in the last quarter of the year.
The Lagos-Ibadan Standard Gauge Rail track line is approximately 155 kilometers in length. It is expected to be delivered by December 2018. Joseph Steve, ANN Abuja.
A military patrol in northern Mali has been ambushed. 4 civilians were killed and 31 others, including 4 French soldiers, were injured on Sunday. The attack is said to have involved a car bomb explosion, followed by gunfire 2 days after Islamist militants killed at least 6 persons during a raid on a military headquarters in central Mali. French troops are helping combat jihadists across Mali's vast desert areas. The security breakdown in Mali takes place a month before a presidential election, making it difficult for international groups to find a way forward in restoring peace there. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Ghana's Agriculture Ministry has reported 2 outbreaks of highly pathogenic H5 bird flu on farms. The report, cited by Paris-based World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, says the outbreaks have killed more than 10,000 birds on farms in the Ashanti and Eastern regions. The report added the outbreak in Eastern region followed the illegal movement of birds from the farm in Ashanti. Ghana earlier this year reported an outbreak of highly pathogenic H9N2 bird flu on a farm in the southwest. 10 soldiers were killed and 4 missing after a Boko Haram attack on a military position in southeast Niger on Sunday. It's been nearly a month since 6 people were killed in the last attacks attributed to the group, shattering several months of calm in the troubled region. The attacks are said to have targeted Niger's army positions in Blabrin, a village not far from the Lake Chad area. U.S. and French ambassadors joined dozens of Ugandan demonstrators in Kampala on Saturday to protest against what they call a rising violence against women, including murder, rape, and kidnapping for ransom. Protesters say since early last year, bodies of more than 20 women have been dumped on roadsides in Kampala. A series of unsolved murders and kidnappings has eroded the trust Ugandans once had in the security forces. Malawian President Peter Mutharika has said on Sunday reports accusing him of fraudulently benefiting from a near $4 million government contract were fake news and part of a ploy to smear him ahead of a national election next year. He says he did not personally benefit in any way from the contract. Mutharika, president since 2014, has been tipped to be re-elected, but regular allegations of corruption could hobble his campaign in the impoverished southern African nation, where reports of government graft have become routine. Malawi is periodically hit by severe food shortages and power outages. The country is struggling to contain its external debt and put its economy on a sound footing. All chief campaign issues alongside corruption. Stay with us, we will return shortly with international news.
sure you want to do this?
Madam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down, keep walking to the left. Yes. You're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on, so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
There is a new all-news network on the scene in Nigeria to give news from a purely news perspective and to promote free information flow across Africa. African News Network, ANN, fresh views, unbiased, bold, with a purely African view. Watch ANN News on MITV. ANN, in a truly African spirit. Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. A humanitarian boat with about 60 migrants on board who were rescued off Libya was heading to Barcelona on Sunday after Italy and Malta had refused to let it dock. Both countries are much closer to the place of rescue. The rescue ship is operated by a Spanish charity which headed back to Spain on Sunday after Mayor of Barcelona gave an order that it could dock there. In a tweet, Italy and Malta were denounced for what was described as inhuman policies and closed ports. They will arrive in Barcelona on Wednesday. Canada began imposing tariffs on Sunday on $12.5 billion worth of U.S. goods as retaliation for the Trump administration's new taxes on steel and aluminum imported to the United States. Some U.S. products, mostly steel and iron, face 25% tariff. The same surcharge the United States imposed on imported steel in May. Other U.S. imports that include mostly household products like ketchup, pizza, and dishwasher detergent will be surcharged at 10% at the Canadian border. That's the same figure America puts on imported aluminium. Canada is the second largest U.S. trading partner in goods behind China. Head of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter Mora, says conditions are not yet conducive for the return of the Rohingya refugees to Myanmar, though Myanmar says it is ready to take back the more than 700,000 Rohingya refugees. Mora said he did not believe returns should start anytime soon based on what he saw during his visit. Rohingya refugees had fled Bangladesh since last August. The Myanmar government has set up 2 reception centers and what it calls a temporary camp near the border in Rakhine to receive the first arrivals. Jordan stepped in to try to avert further violence and stem another wave of displacement across its border with Syria on Sunday. It began mediating new talks between rebels and the Syrian government's main ally, Russia, for a truce in the southwest. Talks broke down on Saturday as the army seized more ground in its offensive, with insurgent lines in some area collapsing and a string of towns and villages accepting the return of government rule after a intense bombardment. Indian police say 48 persons were killed when an overcrowded bus spun off a slippery road and fell into a deep ravine in the northern state of Uttarakhand on Sunday. A local police official from Pauri, the location of the accident, said the 28-seater bus was carrying 59 passengers. Local media say rescue operations were over and victims were being identified by relatives and friends. This is the story of a daring prison escape in Paris. French Justice Minister said on Sunday A gangster is on the run after being sprung from jail by heavily armed gunmen and escaping in a helicopter that landed in the prison grounds. Radon Faid was serving a 25-year sentence at a prison south of Paris for an armed robbery that went wrong and led to the death of a policewoman in 2010. Two gunmen were reported to have jumped from the helicopter to free Faid from the visitor's room, where he was meeting one of his brothers before escaping in the helicopter. The pilot of the helicopter was taken hostage. The pilot was later released, but the helicopter was found burnt out at a location north of Paris. The getaway car also suffered the same fate. And that sounds like a Hollywood movie. This is CNN News. We will take a break now and we will be back with more stories.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network, ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down, keep walking to the left. Yes. You're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on, so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. Now to sports. Russia, host of this year's World Cup, have been so determined to do very well on home turf, and it has worked out well so far. They have advanced to the quarterfinals after beating Spain 4-3 on penalties on Sunday. Spain had dominated the match, but Russia's defense held strong for the 2 hours the match lasted. Goalkeeper Igor Akinfeev saved them twice from trouble and put the Russians on top of favorites Spain. They will play against Croatia on Saturday. In the other match, Uruguay defeated Portugal 2-1. Edinson Cavani is the one Uruguayans are celebrating today after scoring twice, the second goal winning them the match. Portugal leveled the game from a quick corner that coach Uruguay are prepared. Rafael Guerreiro played the ball in, Pepe met it and headed in. They will face France in the quarters. The agony of defeat has surely hit Spain head coach Fernando Hierro, who has admitted that the team failed to achieve what it set out to do at this year's World Cup. He's now not sure of his future as Spain's manager. The team recorded 1 win and 2 draws in the group stages before losing to Russia on Sunday. He praised Andres Iniesta, who announced his retirement from international football when Spain was knocked out of the World Cup. Hierro said about his future that it won't be his decision whether to stay on as coach. He said with Spain's loss, anything can happen. Spain won the World Cup in 2010, but just like Germany this year, they couldn't successfully defend the title 4 years later. Nigeria Super Eagles will get a little bit of rest from the rigors of the World Cup before returning to action in the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying matches. First duel is in September against Seychelles in Victoria. That match will be their first activity as a team after being knocked out of the World Cup. The 3-time AFCON champions did not qualify for the last 2 championships and they lost 2-0 to South Africa in their first qualifier match. They will play Libya at home in October and head to Tripoli 5 days later for a return match. In November, the Super Eagles will be in South Africa for a reverse schedule against Bafana Bafana. Seychelles will play against the Super Eagles in a reverse match in Nigeria in March next year, a game that will close out the qualifying season. Well, that does it for us on ANN News this evening. Thanks for watching. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net, and our social media platforms, ANN Africa TV. I am Rotimi Akintunde.